Uninformed immigrants are at a huge disadvantage in court, in financial and legal matters, and also sometimes in life. Well, what can we do about it? I'll tell you what. We can train, teach, inspire, and empower immigrants to maximize their lives regardless of their immigration status. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. I am your immigration lawyer and host, Otis Landerholm, and this is the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. Hello and welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. I'm your host, Otis Landerholm, the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C. And we're so lucky, we're so fortunate, we're so grateful, we're so happy today because we have a special guest here with us. And so everybody listen up, we've got a special guest, and her name is Bri Lopez. And Bri has been, she's worked with our law firm for years, all right? And she was brave, she was courageous, she was willing to share a little bit of her story. And so, Bri, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Landerholm. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for responding to the invitation, and thank you for your willingness to come and join us here today.
No.
I love it.
I'm appreciative.
I love it. So, yeah, thanks. And so I've got really three questions for you, all right? The first is, who are you? Who is Bri Lopez? Tell us about your story. Tell us, how did you get to where you are right now?
Well, in a few words, I'm going to try to summarize this as best as I possibly can.
Awesome.
I am a mother of three. And I'm a wife. I'm going to be 25 years married already.
Wow.
So I'm a mother, and I am, what can I tell you? I'm the only daughter of two immigrants that came to the United States probably about 26 years ago. So I think that's kind of what describes me the most.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about your immigration story. It was 26 years ago, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty interesting story. I came to the country not by my own will. I was brought, because my parents decided to migrate. The economical situation down in Mexico, it's not favorable, wasn't favorable for us at that time either. So they decided to migrate. And as most of immigrants have done, I got smuggled into the country. When I was 12 years old, we started living up in Washington, and then moved 6 months after to California, and I've been here in California ever since.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what was that all like?
Well, it was very challenging. I think that, as a 12-year-old, although I wanted and I saw myself somewhere else with more favorable conditions, economically, it was challenging. I've encountered several issues, when I arrived to this country. I started getting bullied when I was in school since 6th grade. I got moved into independent study, and then I started working at a place, a body shop to be more exact, and then, just started to help my family economically, and that actually brought on a lot more other problems, which was the reason that, I later qualified for the U visa. But it definitely has been challenging. The bullying at school prohibited me to graduate from high school, and it was challenging, to say the least. Yeah,
I got it. And so thank you, and I'm glad that you got through it.
Yeah, definitely. We got through it. I got married at a very young age. I call my husband actually, one of my saviors. My mom loved him, and he was a hardworking man. And I got pulled out of working at the body shop where I was severely mentally, physically abused.
Yeah. Yeah. And that abuse that you mentioned, it was happening for a long time, correct?
It did. It happened for about probably an extent of 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. There's several things, that post-traumatic stress, prohibits you to remember, to just protect yourself. So, but yes, it was for about 6 months from people that we thought that were close to us, people that we thought it was family.
Yep. And how old were you when you were going through that?
I was actually 13 years old, too young to actually do anything about it. I was very scared. When you are illegal in this country, when you don't know the law,
Yeah.
and people doesn't guide you, you are afraid to report anything because they threaten you. If you say anything, we're gonna deport you. If you say anything, something's gonna happen to you.
Hmm.
And you are afraid. You get afraid. And at 13 years old, no guidance, without telling my parents, because I didn't feel like I could tell my
Yeah.
parents at that point.
I mean, to be clear, you didn't tell anyone,
I
correct?
didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Not no, but for over 18 years, to be more exact.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it with us.
No problem. There's a lot of stigma sometimes when you are Latino, when you are young. People tend to blame the person, because in Mexico you can marry young, you can marry little, and sometimes it's like, oh well, she wanted it, oh well, she liked it, oh she brought it upon herself. So there was that big stigma over it, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know that. I didn't think people were gonna believe me, and I was too afraid for my parents to know, because they had they had firearms.
Oh, wow.
There was drugs going on there that um, that I was afraid to say anything, because I thought something like that could happen to me. I was gonna be a victim, not just a victim of the physical and mental abuse, but also maybe I could be killed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you made it.
Thank you. Thank you. I do think that I've overcome a lot of those challenges. And I think it comes from not feeling a victim. I grew up and I knew that it wasn't my fault. I took therapy. I decided to not to take care of my own kids, to believe and to try to understand, and make sure that they were protected, that something like what I went through didn't go for them, that didn't happen to them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And let me just tell the world listening, and also for you, that your story, I mean, I know this because I meet with people every single day. And you probably are aware of it too, but I know it. I know it, that what you went through, it's not as uncommon as people think. Like there are people right now that are suffering similar types of abuse. There's people right now that are like in situations that they're afraid to call the police. They're afraid to tell their parents. They're afraid to tell the truth about what they're going through. And it's a anyway, it's a serious issue. And so the courage that you are demonstrating right now with being willing to share about it, and how, quite honestly, it didn't like cause, it didn't end your life, right? You have a happy ending. You have overcome it. Bri. Like, you've done something amazing for yourself and for your family. And so talk a little bit about that. What was the process of growing up like? How did you overcome it?
Well, I think that at that point in my life, I didn't believe, my family never believed, about like getting counseling or getting treatment for something like that. But then I decided when I was married and I had my children, and after my own daughter turned 13, it was like something clicked on me. It
Mm-hmm.
clicked, and I said, you know what? I have to do something. I can't keep quiet. What if something like this were to happen not only to my daughter but to somebody else? So I have to speak out. So that's when I reported I reported that I was not only a physical and mental, but I was sexually harassed,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And once I actually spoke about it, um I felt more reassured. I felt understood, at least by the persons who were listening to me, that
Yeah.
this wasn't something that I brought upon myself, that it wasn't something that I wanted or I was willing to do. So I started seeking counseling. I started seeking legal advice, and I started going back to doing things that I didn't do, which was, going back to high school, studying, getting some treatment you know, uh, for my depression, for my anxiety. Because although I've overcome things like those, I know you're always going to have things that, you have to work on, and they might be permanent or
Mm-hmm.
temporary, like getting, like treatment for your depression, for your anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
But I overcome them by not wanting, first changing my mindset. Bri, you are not a victim. This is something. This was something that it could happen to a lot of people, and it doesn't only happen to you. And you are the only one that has the power to change those things around. And I decided to do what I didn't want to do before, which was study, which was, go back to school, started working. Although I wasn't legal back then, I wanted to do something to help this country, because this country not only gave me, what I have currently now. This country had been kind and good to my parents. They were working. We had food in our table. We had things that we didn't have when we were in my country. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't really push more than to say, be a good citizen, and just, you know try to have a positive outlook on things and don't focus on the negative.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. That actually is my last question for you. What is, I mean, you answered it a little bit right now, but if someone were going through what you went through, what's one message that you would like to pass on to that person?
I want to pass on that you are not alone in this, that it is not your fault, that there are help out there. There is help for counseling. There is legal help that they can seek, like seeing you, and sometimes, seeking legal help. Although the statute of limitations had changed for me, and my abuser wasn't able to be prosecuted,
Mm-hmm.
I put it out there, and I put it out there. And if there's another victim out there, this next victim is gonna have, I'm not the only one. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's gonna happen someday. So seek legal help. S-
Yep.
Go and tell your story to a police officer. Go and tell a story to your counselor, and seek legal advice, because of something so horrific, there could be beautiful things that come to you. For instance, my residency and my husband's residency.
Mm-hmm.
Applying for that U visa has been a blessing, and it just feels like it was something that was good, that came out of something that was so bad.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
No, I
Thank you.
actually want to thank you personally because what you do to help others, and it's wonderful what you're doing. And we appreciate you and we value you because you do this out of, not just not just for financial recompensation, but also because you care and we can tell.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, Bri, thank you so much for being with us. For the immigrants out there listening to us, you're not alone. Thank you so much for joining us. If this podcast was useful, share it with one other person in your life. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. Thanks a lot, everybody. And thanks a lot, Bri.
No, thank you, Mr. Landerholm.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. If you like what you heard and if you want to learn more, please go to landerholmimmigration.com/podcast.